Hello, sports fans. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio. Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Monday. Glad to have you along. Hope you got the driveways shoveled off. Did not expect that round of snow. Don Fischer, the great one, the voice of the Hoosiers, joins us now. Don, how was your weekend? Did you do a little show snuffling?
No, I didn't do much of it. I got an ankle issue that was bothering me, and so my wife actually went out and showed the inch of snow off the driveway or whatever.
Yes.
It didn't take her long, so there wasn't much because it usually takes me about, if I'm doing it myself, it takes probably about a half an hour, 35 minutes to get it all shoveled. It only took her about 10 or 12 minutes. I think she was out there. So obviously we got a kind of a slanted driveway, so sometimes it doesn't all hit there, and it's not too bad. So
sounds like we know who the hard worker of the family is as well.
Well, there's no question about that. I mean, I've spent all my time in my office here in the basement, so you got to shoehorn my butt out of here every day.
I hear that, brother. I hear that. Indiana, a unique situation, Don. They're going to go from last Friday until next Sunday without playing. Now, I understand that is there finals or something going on that I'm not aware of?
Nope, this is just the way it fell this time. There's no, yeah, it is odd. There's no question about that. Spring break happens, I don't know, for Indiana sometime in early March, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I didn't know if there's something that changed or whatever. But I did notice that Illinois has a game with Duke. So that's also a very unusual thing to see during conference play, at least for Big Ten teams. And so
I think all the Big Ten teams have one of these weeks where they have like 6, 7, 8 days between games. I think that happens. It's happened for Indiana this year. And I think I've looked at a couple of other schedules, and I think that's the case. I think almost every team had something like that occur. Now that may not be the case for the teams from the West Coast because they're traveling for 5 and 6 days at a time. So, but their schedules are different than ours, and that's what you get for getting into the Big Ten, boys and girls. A lot of money, but you also have lots of trips.
Yeah, that was they could have found that one out if they'd opened up a map. I know that I remember Deshaun Foster from UCLA letting everybody know that the UCLA was located in Los Angeles at the football deal of Big Ten last year. But
we know Mick Cronin doesn't like the cross country trips. We know that.
No, he does not. He has made that really aware. But last Friday, he got something that he has not been able to achieve with his UCLA team, and that was a win east of the Rockies, which I don't think that they have had one in almost 2 years, but they have definitely not gotten one in the Big Ten season, their new inaugural Big Ten. Their only wins had come over Washington, Oregon, and USC, but they get a win over Indiana, and a game in which Indiana trailed most of it, but they kept making a little runs, and they made a run at the end, which they put themselves in position again to not necessarily win that game, but tie that game and force overtime. They had 3 shots at it down low before getting that final last-second shot from Mackenzie Mbako, and just could not make it happen, Don.
Well, the execution at the end of games this year has been a problem, especially here of late. to find a way to win. It's kept Indiana off the win and out of the win column for way too long at this point, and it happened again against UCLA. We haven't said a word about the Michigan State win this week, and obviously we should, because that was a tremendous win for this ball club. It ended a 5-game losing skid. Indiana looked really good in winning that contest at the Breslin Center, which everybody knows is one of the toughest places in the conference to play a basketball game and win. Indiana used the zone defense in that game. I thought that was terrific. It really helped them win that contest. Michigan State's not a great three-point shooting team, and when they switched to it, I think at the point where Indiana was down 12 in the first half, about midway through the first half, they switched to that zone, and they took a 3-point lead by halftime, which, Indiana hasn't had that happen for some time now. So for Indiana to be in that ball game like they were and then to pull it out also ended, I shouldn't say ended. The irony was that Indiana head coach Bob Knight would have lost his record against Tom Izzo for winning the most Big Ten conference games in the history of the Big Ten had he beaten Indiana in that ball game, or had Izzo won it in that ball game, because Izzo got his very first win over Indiana.
I did not know that.
From a conference standpoint, yeah. So the very first time that Indiana and Tom Izzo and Bob Knight met in Michigan State won that ball game, and of course that started, everybody thinking about Tom Izzo as a great basketball coach, or at least a young coach that got his first win against Coach Knight. And then, of course, if he'd have gotten the record against an Indiana ball club, it would have been another, the duplicity. Here's the good news. They did not get a chance to celebrate in Breslin Center.
I think it was absolutely awesome to see for the Indiana program to not let that happen on their watch, especially even though as badly as this season has been up and down. It was nice to see that. Yeah, okay, you're going to get it, but it ain't going to come today against Indiana. Which was nice.
And I love Tom Izzo. He's been one of he's one of those people. I met him the very first time I met him. He came to an Indiana Classic game to scout. He was a GA on Judd Heathcote's staff at the time. I think he was a scout or an assistant coach for like 12 or 13 years before he got the head coaching job there. And a lot of people don't know this. They say, well, where did Tom Izzo coach before he was at Michigan State? Nowhere, because he has been there his entire coaching career, 30 years as their head coach. And he's done just a remarkable job. But the first time I met him, he was sitting beside me. They back in the day when they had the Indiana Classic, they set up the configuration for the media differently than they did for the regular season at that time. And he sat right down beside me. He was scouting the theme. He looked like a pup. I mean, he's just he's not a big guy anyway, number one. He was much thinner then, and he looked like he was about 18 years old. And he sat down beside me. We were done with our ball game, and he was scouting the second game because they were going to play one of the teams that Indiana had in the Classic that year in their next matchup. So Tom is sitting there. We introduced ourselves to one another, and we sat there and talked through that whole ball game. I don't know if he scouted it or not, because it was a game I didn't have to broadcast. Obviously, it was the second game of the 2-game set. So, at any rate, I've known him forever, and he always does a pregame interview with me. Home and road, no matter where we're playing. Just one of the finest people you'll ever meet in regard to just being a good basketball coach and a good guy.
I won't make any comments about it. It'd be nice if you can get your interviews in with your own coach, but that's
well, here's what I'll tell you about that. I have no idea. He just doesn't want to do the pregame show. He doesn't want to do the postgame show, and he doesn't want to do the talk shows. We've always known about the talk shows. That's been an ongoing issue because he just doesn't feel like he needs to or wants to do them. We cut him back this year from 15 to 9 shows, and he didn't show up for 2 of them back earlier in the season anyway. And then we had, the last 3 of the season, he will not be involved in those. So now out of the year, he's only had to do 5. So that's all I can tell you is, and look, it's his prerogative. He gets paid to do those shows, but he doesn't lose any money, I guess, when he doesn't do it, because it's in his contract with the university. He gets paid through the university, and I guess he's going to get all of his money out of this thing. So, well, like I said before, this is not. I don't think it's a. I can't tell you that he's unhappy with me. I don't know if he is or not. We don't have lots of conversations other than the pregame, postgame, and the talk shows, but. It's what it is, what it is, and I'm not bummed by it. I'll deal with whatever I have to deal with.
As you always do as a professional. Speaking of Tom Izzo, someone asked, but he did what he did in one extra season, I think, than Bob Knight, and he made a great statement last week when that was all about. He said, "Look." He said, I had an extra season than Bob. I played more, coached in more games than Bob. He said, and I would trade the national championships for the record with Bob right now if I could speak to him. And he goes, I'll have my own conversation with him later up there. But so Tom Izzo is very, very, very humble about the whole situation. No better coach to have probably done that than Tom Izzo.
I agree with that 100%. In fact, I sent Izzo a letter or an email yesterday, and I just said, you know what? Of all the people that might have broken Bob Knight's record, I'm sure he's smiling down that it was Tom Izzo that did it.
Without question. A big game for Indiana coming up as they get the week off, but the Boilermakers will come to town, and a game that they could have won up in West Lafayette. We're not able to get that accomplished, but they get another shot at the Boilermakers, and the Boilermakers coming off of a hurtful loss at home to Wisconsin, which knocked them a full game behind Dusty May in Michigan for the Big Ten lead.
Yeah, right now Purdue stands 11-4, and Michigan is 12-2, leading the Big Ten right now after their win yesterday. So it's been an interesting year, especially those teams at the top. I mean, you've got really right now, you've got 6 teams that still are in the hunt, but that's it.
Crazy.
Yeah, and 2 losses for the leader, Michigan, 3 losses for Michigan State, 4 for Purdue and Wisconsin. And you can still say that UCLA and Maryland have a shot with 5 losses. So there's 5 games left, at least from Indiana's perspective. And there will be 5 left after that Purdue ball game. So it's going to be interesting. We'll see. Oh, I guess the Purdue game is part of that 5th. Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll look forward to it and see what the crowd was great. They were in that game over the weekend as well. And I remember that's going to be a fun time on Sunday, regardless. The fans have been great. They're in these games regardless, I've noticed, which is a little surprising. They could have checked out, but they haven't. They've been in there. They were in that Michigan game the whole way down.
Yep, they were. I give them credit for that. I mean, we're not getting everybody showing up for games. Let's put it that way, because the balconies were pretty much, or at least the balcony that I look at on the far side behind where TV does their stuff from, that balcony was almost empty on Saturday. So there are a lot of people who have season tickets, and season tickets are all sold every year. But a lot of people are not coming right now because of the struggles that this team has had this year. But the people that do come, they show up, and I'll give them credit. They have not gone off like they did after the Illinois ball game since.
Absolutely. No way. And looking forward to it. So what do you do with this long week off, man?
I'm going to Florida for 3 days tomorrow.
Are you really?
Yeah. My wife and I are going down to Florida for 3 days, and then we're coming back on Friday. And it's going to be a nice 3-day vacation for 3 rounds of golf.
Perfect timing, brother. Leave the snow. That's why you're such the wise man. Don Fischer, the voice of the Hoosiers, joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We appreciate you, sir.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Jim. See ya.
Hello, sports fans. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio.